Welcome back to our deep dive. For everyone listening, especially those of you deep in software engineering, we're cutting through the noise today to focus on something pretty critical.
Yeah, absolutely. We're looking at Meta, specifically their Llama 4 AI model,
Hmm.
but not just the tech specs. We're really digging into the why behind their recent moves.
Exactly. The potential political motivations and, maybe more importantly for our listeners, the risks this could pose. Risks for computer science, risks for, well, the wider world, too.
Especially thinking about how authoritarian regimes might, use these kinds of powerful tools.
Right. So we've got two main sources we're drawing from today. There's an article from 404 Media that asks some pretty sharp questions about Meta wanting Llama 4 to be less left-leaning.
And then we also have Meta's own announcement, their blog post about the Llama 4 family, where they lay out what they're trying to achieve.
So our mission here for this deep dive is to really understand the implications. What does it mean when a company deliberately tries to politically rebalance a major AI model?
And specifically, what does it mean for you, the software engineer, using or building on this tech? How might it impact your work? And what are the bigger picture concerns? Okay, let's unpack this.
So let's start with Meta's own words. In their Llama 4 announcement, they talk about tackling what they see as a historical left lean in big language models.
They basically say this lean comes from the training data, scraped from the internet, which reflects certain biases.
And their stated goal.
Well, they say they want Llama 4 to, and I quote loosely here, understand and articulate both sides of a contentious issue.
Without picking favorites or refusing to answer political stuff.
Right, and they even draw a comparison to Elon Musk's Grok model, saying Llama 4 is similar politically and shows this leaning less often than Llama 3 did.
Okay. On the face of it, you could almost spin that as striving for neutrality, maybe?
You could, but then you read the 404 Media piece and, well, it offers a significantly more critical perspective.
What's their
Their argument, essentially, is that this push isn't really about pure neutrality. It might be more
strategic?
like maybe trying to appeal to the current political administration, or perhaps just competing with Musk, who's been quite vocal about his AI being non-woke.
The article brings in Alex Hanna from Dare, right?
Yes, and Hannah suggests this whole framing feels like Meta reacting specifically to potentially the Trump administration. It raises that question of political alignment.
Is Meta playing politics with its AI?
That's the implication being explored, and it gets deeper. Abeba Burhain from Mozilla points out a really key danger.
Which is?
Applying this both sides idea to things where there isn't actually a valid debate on both sides. Think climate science, public health.
Right. Presenting established facts alongside misinformation as if they're equally valid.
Right.
That's problematic.
It's a false balance, as Burhain calls it. And then Emily Bender from the University of Washington adds another layer of critical questions.
How about the process itself?
Exactly. Like, how transparent is Meta being about the training data for Llama 4? What are their actual criteria for deciding what counts as unbiased?
And maybe more fundamentally, why are we pushing out these, as Bender puts it, information ecosystem polluting devices in the first place?
Yeah, she argues the focus shouldn't just be on left versus right bias, but on the whole concept of using these chatbots as info sources without total clarity on how they're built and what data they use.
And the 404 Media article connects this back to real-world harms, doesn't it? Things that maybe Meta isn't focusing on right now.
Precisely. They point out that AI bias already contributes to harmful outcomes, like biased surveillance tech or discriminatory algorithms in hiring or loans, even non-consensual deepfakes.
And the argument is that Meta's focus on this specific political lean kind of sidesteps these arguably more immediate and tangible harms.
It does seem that way, according to the article. Now, let's connect this to the broader context for computer science. We know AI bias is real, it's well documented.
Yeah, the models learn from data, and our data reflects society's biases, race, gender, nationality, all that.
For sure. Most research is focused there. But then there's this PLOS-1 study that looked specifically at the political leanings of LLM.
And what did they find? Did they confirm Meta's point about a left lean?
Interestingly, yes, to some extent. They found that many conversational LLMs, the ones fine-tuned for chat, did tend to test as left of center on political orientation scales.
Okay, so Meta wasn't just imagining it.
Not entirely, perhaps, but here's the really crucial finding from that PLOS-1 paper. They also tested the base models. before the fine-tuning.
Right.
Those base models, much more politically neutral in their responses. The catch, though,
There's always a catch.
their answers were often, well, incoherent, gibberish, basically. So neutrality achieved by not making much sense.
Not exactly useful then?
Not really. But the study also showed something else, something really critical for this discussion. How easy it is to push these models politically.
How?
Supervised fine-tuning. Just feeding them relatively small amounts of data aligned with a specific political viewpoint was enough to significantly shift their responses in that direction.
Okay, so now let's talk directly to the software engineers listening. This is where it gets very relevant to your day-to-day, potentially.
Absolutely. If a foundational model, something like Llama 4 that people might build upon, is being deliberately tweaked for political reasons, what does that mean for the field?
It means the tools you're using might have an inherent skew, right? Not just an accidental bias from data, but an intentional one.
Exactly. It could subtly guide research. Maybe certain applications that get prioritized, others ignored, just because the base model leans a certain way.
And think about open source. If Llama becomes, a standard that many people use and build on, and it has this engineered balance.
Does that compromise the neutrality we often expect from foundational open source tech? It's a huge question.
Plus, is Meta's definition of neutrality this present both sides approach even achievable without causing harm?
That's the other major concern. Does giving equal airtime to, say, factual information and deliberate disinformation actually create a different kind of bias? A bias towards confusion or validating falsehoods?
It feels like it could easily pollute the information space even further.
It does. And this links directly back to that point in the 404 media piece about authoritarian regimes.
How AI tech often ends up empowering things like state surveillance.
Precisely. Now imagine those regimes getting their hands on AI models that are designed to present both sides of potentially harmful narratives, or models that, as the PLOS-1 study showed, can be easily fine-tuned further with just a bit of effort.
You could weaponize that both sides, feature incredibly effectively for propaganda, couldn't you? Use it to muddy the waters on human rights abuses, historical facts.
Or censorship. Imagine an AI justifying why certain information should be suppressed by presenting both sides of freedom of speech. It's a chilling thought.
And that PLOS-1 finding about easy steering makes it even scarier. Regimes wouldn't need massive resources to twist these tools.
A relatively small, focused data set could be enough to turn a balanced model into a powerful tool for social control or disinformation campaigns.
So while Meta might be framing this as correcting a left lane,
The real danger, the bigger risk, is any deliberate political manipulation of these incredibly powerful foundational AI models. It doesn't matter which direction they're pushed, the act itself is risky.
it sets a precedent, yeah, politicizing the bedrock technology.
Exactly. That's the core threat.
Okay, so let's try and summarize the key takeaways here for our listeners. The software engineers building the future.
Right. Point one. Meta is actively trying to shift the political output of Llama 4. That's not speculation, it's stated policy.
Point two, critics, like those in the 404 media piece, suggest this isn't just about neutrality, but could be driven by political or competitive motives.
Point three. This raises serious concerns about potentially skewing a foundational technology, introducing bias, and maybe even validating misinformation through a flawed both sides approach.
And crucially, point four, these politically influenced or easily influenceable models pose a significant risk if adopted or adapted by authoritarian regimes, potentially becoming tools for censorship, propaganda, and control.
And that directly impacts you, the engineer. The tools you use might carry biases you didn't expect, influencing your work's outcomes and ethics.
The reliability and neutrality of your building blocks are being questioned. And the potential downstream uses, particularly in less open societies, add a layer of global responsibility.
It's a lot to think about.
It really is. So here's the final thought we want to leave you with, something to really chew on. As the people actually building with these AI tools, shaping tomorrow's technology, what's your responsibility here?
How much do you need to scrutinize the underlying biases, the potential political agendas baked into the models you use or create?
What does balanced truly mean when we're talking about AI this powerful? And maybe the biggest question.
How do we, as a community of technologists and engineers, ensure these tools actually advance knowledge and support open societies worldwide?
Instead of letting them become, sophisticated instruments for manipulation, for control, especially in the hands of those who restrict freedom. That's the challenge, one we hope this deep dive helps you think more about.